In Romans chapter 13, verses 1 to 7, the Bible records, "Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror unto good works, but to evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is a minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is a minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor."
While Black culture's authentic voice was finally being heard around the nation, in the South, 1989 would culminate with another giant step for America, a hard-won political breakthrough that would help fuel historic change to come.
"There is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death."
While 1989's Black cultural renaissance continued around America, political history was being made in the South.
On a blustery, sunny day in a city that was once the capital of the Confederacy, a grandson of slaves was sworn in today as the nation's first elected Black governor.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thanks so very much.
It's a great day for Virginia.
By a margin of less than 7,000 votes, Douglas Wilder was elected governor of Virginia.
When I could read that all men were created equal and that they were endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these were life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, I knew it meant me.
Black politicians had won elections before, but Wilder's hard-fought win to become the nation's first elected Black governor, along with the 1989 election of David Dinkins as New York's first Black mayor, broke political barriers. The MTV generation took note, and with Rock the Vote a year later, Black voices were further empowered.
Rock the Vote is a youth-oriented voter registration campaign launched by Virgin Records that's seeking to rally music fans to fight back at the polls.
The book of 1 Kings chapter 12 verses 1 to 14. The Bible reads, "And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel will come to Shechem to make him king. And it came to pass, when Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who was in Egypt, heard of it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him, and Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came, and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore, make thou the grievous service of thy father, and his heavy yoke which he put upon us lighter, and we will serve thee. And he said unto them, Depart yet for 3 days, then come again to me. And the people departed. And King Rehoboam consulted with the old men that stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, and said, How do ye advise that I may answer this people? And they spake unto him, saying, If thou wilt be a servant unto this people this day, and wilt serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servants forever. But he forsook the counsel of the old men, which they had given him, and consulted with the young men that were grown up with him, and which stood before him. And he said unto them, What counsel give ye that we may answer this people, who have spoken to me, saying, Make the yoke which thy father put upon us lighter? And the young men that were grown up with him spake unto him, saying, Thus shalt thou speak unto this people that spake unto thee, saying, Thy father made our yoke heavy, but make thou it lighter unto us. Thus shalt thou say unto them, My little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. And now whereas my father did lade you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father had chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the third day, as the king had appointed, saying, Come to me again the third day. And the king answered the people roughly, and forsook the old men's counsels that they gave him, and spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, and I will add to your yoke. My father also chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. Rehoboam represents the black politicians that were elected into office. Now Rehoboam can represent anyone voted into office once they fit the parameters of the story. However, in this case, we are using him to represent the black politicians who were elected after 1989. The scripture says, All Israel will come to Shechem to make him king. The people then called a meeting to discuss what changes could be made to lighten their societal burdens. However, instead of acting in the best interest of the people under his care, he elected to listen to the counsel of the young men who lacked experience instead of the old, tried and tested men who understood the times. Likewise today, the youth who turn out in large numbers to elect politicians to represent them in the nation's capital are without the necessary understanding and life experience to elect the leaders that are best for them, and instead elect leaders who make their yoke heavy. This is frequently heard years down the line when, in hindsight, the people realize that the politicians they elected did nothing to improve their lives and community. But alas, it is too late. The damage is already done. If the elected politicians of this nation do good, then the people will serve them, and this nation will prosper. But the opposite course was taken, and thus we see the condition of the black community today. Schools are failing, families are destroyed, men are thrown into prison, brutalized, and sometimes killed, and the future looks increasingly dark. Therefore, the youth become idle and turn to crime and violence. The message of God to the black community and America at large is, Stand ye in the ways and see, and ask for the old path, where is the good way, and ye shall find rest for your souls.
The new youth-driven, politically astute voice of black entertainment was now affecting the electorate. This culminated in the fall of 1992, when a presidential candidate struggling in the polls chose the Arsenio Hall Show to help him reach a new audience and stage a comeback.
Bill Clinton comes on, he's just relaxed and charming.
You got millions of people in this country today who just don't feel connected to the life the rest of us want them to live. I mean, you tell them to register and vote, get an education, and go to work, and they say, may not have a job, but if I deal drugs, I can make money. You tell them that they ought to register and vote, and they say, why? I'll still be unsafe on my streets. What this election's about, in a way, is reconnecting more folks to the American dream, making them feel like they're a part of our community, and making them feel that tomorrow can be better than today.
That became a phenomenon. It really, humanized him late in the presidential race and made him seem like a man of the people.
I, William Jefferson Clinton, do solemnly swear.
People were calling Bill Clinton the first black president. The coolest compliment is he called me once. He said to me, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been president. That's the ultimate compliment.
Bill Clinton, the unofficial, quote-unquote, first black president, was received within the black community as a savior to the black cause. However, today, this sentiment has largely changed due to the effect of one piece of legislation, the 1994 crime bill, signed into law by then-President Bill Clinton. According to the Center for American Progress, the legacy of the Violent Crime Control Act and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, better known as the Crime Bill, has re-emerged in the national debate around the criminal justice reform and public safety. Many consider the crime bill to be one of the cornerstone statutes that accelerated mass incarceration. But the law's negative effect did not end there. States and localities were incentivized through a massive infusion of federal funding to build more jails and prisons and to pass so-called truth in sentencing laws and other punitive measures that simultaneously increased the number and length of prison sentences while reducing the possibility of early release for those incarcerated. It has been well documented that these policies were failures. Their cost to society came not only from the staggering amount of taxpayer dollars that were invested in enforcement, but also from the disproportionate incarceration of a generation of African American men in the name of public safety. Moreover, tough on crime measures, specifically longer incarceration sentences, have had at best a marginal effect on improving public safety. The book of John chapter 4 and verse 37 reads, "And herein is that saying true, one soweth and another reapeth." Galatians chapter 6 verses 7 and 8, the Bible records, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap everlasting life."
Another young, idealistic candidate would use the same inclusive language of those who came before him to ride a wave of hope into the history books.
There is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America.
Senator Barack Obama of Illinois will be the next president of the United States.
That idea whispered by slaves and abolitionists, that spirit sung by immigrants and homesteaders and those who marched for justice, that creed reaffirmed by those who planted flags from foreign battlefields to the surface of the moon, a creed at the core of every American whose story is not yet written. Yes, we can. Yes, we did. Yes, we can. Thank you. God bless you. May God continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you.
In 1989, politics and pop culture collided. Today, the bond they share is ingrained in artistic expression and echoed in the words of our leaders.
In the words of a prolific, poetic philosopher, Kanye West.
Tupac said, "They got the money for war, but they can't feed the poor."
We have now far more elected officials of color than we've ever had in the history of the country. But has it brought about the kinds of change that many of us thought it would have brought about? The answer is obviously no.
New details about the tragic shooting death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin.
There is growing outrage tonight after an unarmed African-American teenager was shot and killed by police.
White police officer is in custody and is being charged with murder in the shooting death of a black man after a traffic stop.
Protests are spreading after an officer today shot and killed an African-American man.
We're at a time, I think, more than any since the civil rights movement, where you do see a lot of on-the-ground political activities. That kind of protest movement is driven by culture, is driven by art in Black culture and for the Black community. We're trying to find our way.
There is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. 1989 was the beginning of a movement of Black consciousness, and all the efforts to change the status quo have been futile. Though the Black community voted and participated in the electoral process in record numbers and have elected Black politicians and representatives in record numbers, things remain the same. Why? Because the only way to peace is found in the scriptures. If men would look to the Bible, they would find the solutions to all their problems. But alas, it is not so. Men seek to solve their problems without Christ, the only way, the truth, and the life. 1989 was an important year in the history of this country, and the unrest within the black community, which culminated in the Black Lives Matter movement, is another testament to the fact that prophecy was fulfilled. Yet multitudes are asleep to the battle waged behind the scenes for their lives. Wake up, dear saints of God, before the door of mercy closes, and it is eternally too late.
Black Lives Matter's finances under scrutiny once again as tax documents show the nonprofit on the brink of bankruptcy.
Black Lives Matter's national organization at risk of going bankrupt after its finances plunged millions into the red last year.
So Black Lives Matter released their 990 IRS filing. They collected $80 million. Where is that money?
It's not here. Everything looks worse than it was.
Where have you seen that money impacted throughout the city? So my producer just sent me a link. It is just shocking to me because of how much money was raised to think that where he lived, the bills weren't being covered. Super frustrating, but that's a dead end, so. And here's where it gets really interesting. Ready for some BLM pride? Another $200K went to escorts, BDSM workers, strippers, peep show workers, phone sex operators, and webcam performers. And then at that moment, it became personal. And I thought, not only am I going to say the truth, I am going to scream the truth louder than you can scream the lies. It's incredible that the majority of the world hasn't seen this.